Share my screen. All right.
As long as you're not giving me
The challenges of climate and sustainability are creating exciting new career opportunities in a whole range of fields, from communications to engineering. What are they, and how can you prepare yourself to be part of the post-carbon economy? Let's join Kim Paul-Green, a freelance sustainability educator from Leadership Global Change, to get some answers.
Hello, what a fantastic welcome. Thank you so much. I'm here today with Sophie, who's also, I'm just going to share my screen. So, I'm going to, here we are, does that work? Fantastic. Well, hello everybody. If you've been following sessions over the last few days, you'll have heard a lot about jobs. I've heard people tell you that there are going to be loads of exciting opportunities to work on climate solutions in the future. And they are right. People are estimating that there will be millions of new jobs in the green economy. I'll work out how to change my slides. How do I do that? There we are. Millions of new jobs in the green economy. What we want to talk about today is that in the very near future, there may be no distinction between climate jobs and other jobs. Every future job is going to be affected by climate change and sustainability. And you might be interested in a wide range of possible careers. We can pretty much guarantee that knowing about climate is going to be useful in whichever of these routes or other routes you choose. My name is Kim Paul-Green. I run summer schools for teenagers on climate change and sustainability in Oxford at the Environmental Change Institute at Oxford University. We bring small groups of students into the department and they discuss science, policy and solutions with researchers, entrepreneurs and politicians. I also run the Oxford Climate Club, which you'll find on Eventbrite if you're interested. We run weekly half-hour chats on Zoom with sustainability professionals, and you can join in if you like. Today I'm presenting with the marvellous Sophie Brooks, who advises businesses on sustainability issues, including some really big organisations. Sophie was in PR before she switched to sustainability, and the skills that she gained from that communication world are really important in solving sustainability problems. Sophie's company is called Fit for Purpose, and I really love that title because it suggests to me that every business should be acting sustainably, just as a matter of course, i.e. not wasting resources, not creating waste. It should not be the exception. And I hope that by the time most of you here are in your new exciting careers, that will be the case. So what we're going to do over the next 20 minutes or so is give you some examples of how all types of jobs are going to be greener in future. And for our examples, we're going to look at car companies, we're going to look at buildings and cities, we're going to look at tech companies, and if we've got time, we'll have a little look at the retail sector. And for each type, we're going to ask and hopefully answer the following questions. What are they doing about climate change? What new roles are being created as a result? And what knowledge and skills do new employees need to acquire now? And we're going to look at how you can develop these skills during school and higher education. If you've got questions as we go along, please put them in the chat and Sophie and I can answer them if we can in the final 10 minutes. So before I hand over to Sophie to talk about the automotive sector, I wanted to mention a reason why it's important to state that all careers will be green. Well, you guys here today are presumably already interested in climate and sustainability, or at least if you weren't at the beginning of the week, you probably are by now. And you might already be thinking about those greener jobs, but you'll have friends and family who are less convinced. And I think greener jobs is one of those killer messages for skeptical people. If all jobs are going to be affected by climate change, those who've studied it, understand it, and are aware of the potential solutions, maybe they're going to do better in those jobs than those who've been left behind in their learning. So, on to our examples. Sophie, can I hand over to you to talk about the automotive sector?
Sure. Hello, everybody. So as Kim said, I am somebody that has had a sort of a midway career change. So I spent almost 15 years in communications and PR. And now I work advising companies on how they can do a better job to reduce their impact on the environment, as well as to try and create more positive social impact in the world. And one of the sectors that I'm working in at the moment is the automotive sector, the car industry. And the car industry is undergoing a massive amount of change at the moment. So they've had a huge wake-up call because legislation has come in all over Europe, all over the world, that is going to ban the production and sale of fossil fuel-based vehicles, basically after 2035, but lots of countries are going to bring that forward, I think. There's also a lot of disruption in this sector. So new all-electric suppliers, car manufacturers have entered the market. You might have heard of Telstra, Polestar. And so the race to electrify cars and make them non-carbon is really on. So what are car companies doing about that? Well, they're redesigning their vehicles. So they're having to bring in electric or hybrid, plug-in hybrid models. They're looking even at hydrogen-based cars. And they're looking also, therefore, at how they can sustainably source the raw materials for those kind of vehicles that all use lithium-ion batteries. They take up huge amounts of natural resources like cobalt and nickel, which are finite and rare. So that's a big issue for the sector. And they're also looking at minimising other fossil fuel-based materials that they use in their cars, such as plastic, and looking for alternatives to that. So what does all that mean for careers and potential opportunities in the sector? Well, to redesign the cars, you need engineers and design specialists. And these days there are loads of courses, higher education courses you can do that are actually based exclusively around sustainable design. There's also the whole resource and waste management sort of area. So how do we find new ways to reuse materials, recycle them, repurpose them? So things like ocean plastics are now retrieved and used in a lot of interiors, actually, of cars that are being built today. What sort of topics and courses might you study, therefore, if you wanted to have some useful skills for this kind of sector? Well, there's industrial design, I think, sustainable design, mechanical engineering, and electronics. Those are the kind of courses I think I see people that are trained in those areas would be excellent to go into this sector. And then there are also these new corporate roles emerging in automotive businesses, and all businesses actually, which are based around this sustainable sourcing problem, finding suppliers of raw materials, companies that make products that don't produce any environmental damage. And they're not also produced through things like child labour, unfair working conditions, or exploitation. What might you study to go into those sorts of career paths? It could be international development, could be law, environmental law, environmental management, or actually economics, which also has a number of now environmental-led economics disciplines within it. And then the final kind of challenge that this sector has, I think, is the way that people are consuming cars is changing. It's another hurdle for car companies. So research shows that your generation and the generation that's just started to drive ahead of you are much less likely to make big purchases like cars, and they're more interested in what's being called the sharing economy. So you know, that means that new business models are having to be developed that allow vehicle sharing, so short-term leasing and renting of cars, car club schemes. There's a company called Zipcar that operates in big cities and allows you to buy a certain number of hours of a car's time every week. What skills might help in that area? Well, it's entrepreneurial people that enter this market. So they set up new disruptive businesses. You could have studied business studies, business management, and increasingly there's now business with sustainability that you can study. I think that's everything I wanted to say on the auto sector, Kim.
Thank you, that's fantastic. Right, I was going to talk a little bit about homes and cities. You may have already heard that in order to meet our commitments on climate change in this country, we need to change how we design and build new houses. But also, because we've got so many existing houses, we need to go back and retrofit a lot of those with different heating systems, better insulation, etc. And I found this article yesterday, 10th of November, in Housing Today, which is talking about the Labour Party calling for an expansion of energy efficiency in a retrofit programme to spark the green economy recovery. And they're talking about spending £30 billion, creating something like 400,000 jobs, many of which will be in building and construction. And if you think about the sort of new technologies that are going to go on in this sector, we need to build our houses to be much more airtight. They do that in other parts of the world. We need to be using much smarter materials, low carbon materials. We need to think about making sure our buildings face in the right direction. It seems like house builders never take this into account at the moment. We need to have low water plumbing. Most of our plumbing leaks terribly because we don't design it properly, and people don't necessarily know how to install it properly. We need to have new different types of paints and fabrics so they're not emitting so many nasty chemicals and not using chemicals to create them. When we're building new developments, we need to think about road layouts that is more friendly towards pedestrians and cycling and reduces the pollution from cars that are affecting local communities. We need to install solar panels. You can see the picture in the middle here is of a development, one of the most eco developments in the country called Bedsted. They have solar panels built in as a matter of course. You don't have to add them on afterwards. There are some buildings around the world, not in this country, I don't believe, that when they're built, they collect rainwater as a matter of course in tanks underground. And that stops flash flooding in the local area. And it also means that you've got a supply of water to grow your vegetables with or do your garden with. There are new types of technology being developed. People are thinking about circular design. What happens when you demolish a building? There's loads of materials that normally ends up in landfill, and we can do better and use that material as long as we think about how we're going to use it before we use it in the first place. There's new types of concrete which actually might absorb carbon dioxide. Concrete is one of the most carbon dioxide emitting materials we can use, but maybe we can reverse that. We need to find new low energy and water appliances. We need to think about the environments that we're building our communities in, green spaces, communal spaces. We need to think about the waste systems. So there's so much and so many different opportunities, exciting new careers. We need architects with new skills, designers with new skills, engineers, techies, people who think in systems, who think sort of long term, not just how do you put up this building now, but what's going to happen to it in 30, 40, 50 years. And we need planners to site things properly within our cities and our towns. So I think there's lots of exciting opportunities within construction, almost anything you want to do, from law to finance to design to fabric construction, anything you like, as long as you don't create flammable cladding is going to be needed in the future. So Sophie, can I ask you to come back and talk about technology? I haven't given you any prompts here, you've just got a nice picture of the planet.
That's fine. So another sector that I'm doing quite a lot of work for at the moment is the tech sector, the high-tech sector, as we used to call it. And tech businesses are probably some of the fastest growing and most profitable businesses in the world. I think that Apple's annual profits are the equivalent of many small countries' gross national product. And also in the year that we've just had, you'll have noticed, you won't be surprised to hear that the tech companies are really the big winners from, throughout COVID, that, providing technology to work at home, for us to shop online. Those are the companies that have continued and grown throughout the pandemic. But all of that extra use of data comes with a really massive carbon footprint. It's something that hasn't, until quite recently, really been recognised. All of the data that we're sending back and forth over the internet and storing, not locally on our computers as we used to in businesses and in individual homes, but in data centres, increasingly in what's called the cloud. This is where the big tech companies are having quite an impact in terms of their environmental footprint. Those data centres are often placed in remote locations like deserts, and they have they require a massive amount of energy to run. they also take huge amounts of cooling because they have to be kept at a constant temperature. So tech companies have been the kind of under the radar for a long time in terms of being not considered to be environmental baddies, if you like, but recently this has come into focus, and a lot of tech companies have been set some of the most ambitious carbon reduction targets of any sector that I've worked with. So there are companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple and Amazon and many others who've all declared they're going to be either carbon neutral or carbon positive by the year 2030, for example. So what are they looking for to help them achieve all of this? Well, in terms of those data centers, they really need to have some energy management specialists. They need civil engineers and building management specialists to advise on the design and the location of their data centers. They also need to think about how they're going to power those data centers with renewable energy instead of fossil fuel energy. And many of these companies are also looking at funding the development of new low carbon alternatives, sort of untested technologies like something called carbon capture and storage, and direct air capture, which actually sucks the carbon out of the air. They're also looking how they can build their own in-house teams at the company themselves to help them monitor, manage and drive down their own carbon footprint. But also they want to communicate with their customers, the media and government about what they're doing. So what kind of skills do they need then? Are they looking to hire to deliver on that change? Well, there's something called environmental management, which you can study at university, or you can go on and study afterwards. There's a lot of data analytics and carbon analytics. They're looking also for specialists in business sustainability, which is another course that you can actually specialise in at bachelor level now. And there's a new type of accountant, which is taking the traditional accountancy and applying something called natural capital accounting. So that's where you take into consideration the value of the services, the ecosystem services that you're buying but not paying for, using but not paying for, that the planet provides. And that's a whole new area, I think, which is fascinating and a potential career path for anybody that would be maybe normally interested in going down the accountancy route. But also to try and find these new exciting technological solutions, you know, it's physicists, it's chemists, it's natural scientists as well, who are looking at how they can develop these new type of low carbon technologies. And for the jobs in-house to help the companies communicate on everything that they're doing, that is your marketers, your public relations professionals and sustainability professionals as well. And there's one last area that I just want to touch on, which is really fascinating for me, which is that technology can also solve some of the world's biggest environmental problems through huge big data analytics. So many big tech companies are now using their own products and technologies to help collect, manage, monitor and report on huge different environmental data sets. They're using artificial intelligence, AI, to address some of the massive challenges the world is facing, like deforestation, illegal fishing and the depletion of natural resources. So for that, they're looking for advanced computer programmers, data analysts, natural scientists, even ecologists and geologists that need to feed into those types of systems. So an incredibly broad range of opportunities in that sector in the future.
That's great, Sophie, thanks. It makes me think of the talk that was on yesterday about maths for planet Earth. Miriam from University of Oxford, if you haven't seen that one, go back and watch it, because she was talking about how useful math skills are going to be for solving the climate crisis from any number of perspectives. I mean, all of us ought to have some basic maths literacy, and the Maths for Planet Earth website gives us some really good examples for GCSE and A-level maths that are based around sustainability issues. So it's worth having a look at that. Now, I was going to talk a little bit about retailers, because that's an area I'm always interested in. On our summer schools that I ran in Oxford, we've been using retailers John Lewis and Waitrose as examples of companies that are taking steps to be more sustainable. We're probably all aware of the environmental impact of clothing. There's been a lot about fashion on the summit, I know, and I think quite a lot about food as well, and packaging and all those, and plastic and all those sorts of things. So retailers are definitely in the firing line over sustainability issues. And some of them, in fact, quite a lot of them now, are trying to do a lot to reduce their environmental footprint. I think I won't go into it in huge amounts of detail, but I wanted to talk about buyers, because I think buyers actually have really fun jobs. They've always, they're the sorts of people that go out around the world and find interesting new fabrics or fashions or pieces of furniture, or for John Lewis, different. They go out to farms and look at different suppliers for different products. And I think these are fabulous, fun jobs. You're out on the road, you're talking to different people, you're learning, you're a real expert in your area. People really specialize in a particular type of product. And what they had to think about up until now was really price and time to market. Could they get the product there in time? How was it going to be stored, etc. But now, just they have to think about child labour issues, they have to think about the supply chain, about packaging, they have to think about wood sourcing, they have to think about dyes and whether the dyes are polluting water sources when the products are being created. So all of a sudden, you've taken a very traditional, very long-standing career path and made it completely different. And I think, from what I understand from these companies, the buyers are really embracing this. They're really enjoying it. It's a huge sort of additional area of expertise that they're absorbing, and really feeling that they are not only being brilliant at what they do in terms of being buyers, but also making a big impact in reducing the environmental impact of their products. So that's a really fun one. And if you think about all the other types of activities that retailers do, there's huge amounts of logistics getting products from where it's created or where the parts of it are created into the shop where you and I go and buy it. And then there are all the issues around waste management and building management this is the picture of the Westgate Shopping Centre here in Oxford. There's a lot of issues around managing all the infrastructure around those buildings. And the waste that comes out of them, but then they're potentially responsible for those products at the end of life. So that's not something that retailers have ever really had to think about before. They just sell us something and it's our responsibility, or the council's responsibility, to get rid of it once we finish using it. But now, with all the new regulations and people's expectations, actually they have to think about what do they do with those products once the consumer has finished using them. And John Lewis, just before lockdown, was in the process of starting a new buyback scheme, so you could take your fashion back to them, which was then hopefully going to result in refurbishment and reselling, and hopefully that'll go on after we've got rid of COVID. So yeah, I think the jobs that Sophie was talking about, all the the engineers and the financiers and the accountants, those jobs with the environmental twist can exist across all sorts of sectors, and the retailing sector, I think, is a particularly rich one for lots of people to go into. Now, where are we with time? I can't see questions, so I don't know. So as well as these big companies, I just can never resist looking at cool startups, because I think they're so stimulating. And you've heard about some of them over the last few days, but here's some of my favorites. So Mud Jeans. If you buy jeans, you should have a look at Mud Jeans. It's like a subscription system for jeans. They worked out how to take out all the toxic chemicals. Normal jeans have lots of toxic chemicals in them. And when you send your jeans back to them, when you finish with them, you don't like them or they've worn out, they've worked out how to recycle all those fibres back into new jeans, which is actually pretty tricky. This company is making leather, really, it looks like leather, out of pineapples. That's pretty cool. It does look really convincing, but obviously no animals died in the production of this product. BioBean, they make coffee logs, the logs that you can burn on your fire, and I've got some on my fire down here, out of ground coffee. An awful lot of coffee goes to waste, and there's a lot of energy and oils in it. And this company has found a way of collecting lots of coffee from coffee outlets, you know, Costa and all the rest of it, and compressing it into coffee logs. It's a real circular business. So Toast Ale, none of you will know about this. Toast Ale makes fantastic beer in bottles, and they make it out of waste bread. The bakers that make and sell us bread, unfortunately, they waste a lot. A lot of it doesn't get bought, and so normally it would go into landfill where it would create an awful lot of methane. So they've been going around scooping up waste bread, excuse me, and making beer out of it. And this guy, he makes crackers out of crickets. I caught a talk earlier today where people were talking about how important it's going to be for us to eat bugs. And having tried to feed bugs to my various students on workshops, the packets of crickets that still look like crickets don't go down too well. But nobody seems to be particularly bothered when they're compressed into a little brown square. So try some cricket crackers. So if you're excited by all these possibilities, what do you need to do next? Well, I think some of these jobs are going to require a bit of a new way of thinking, and perhaps Sophie will comment on these as to whether she thinks that people are already using these new ways of thinking. This table here I've taken from a book called The Circular Economy by a guy called Ken Webster, who's been very influential on Ellen MacArthur and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'm not sure if they were talking this week, but they've got a fantastic website. If you haven't been there, go and look at their website. Amazing resources about what companies are doing to be more sustainable and encouraging them to be so. So they talk about how we used to think about skills for jobs being about problem solving, individual learning, being competitive. And now very much the emphasis is on whole system thinking. So in the retail sector, for example, they have to think all the way from where a product comes from to where it's going to end its life. And very much around team and group learning, perhaps something that we don't always do very much of at school. And about being competitive still between groups, but very much collaborative within our groups. Again, something that perhaps we don't always get the opportunity to practice. And about meta learning, which I like to think of as being interdisciplinary learning. So how does biology fit with music? How does physics fit with geology? How to making links, perhaps we don't always do when we're doing 3 A levels or IB or whatever it is we're studying.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sophie, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say, make a comment on the whole systems thinking point, which another sort of way of thinking about that as well, and in terms of learning, is the way that economics has traditionally always been taught, which is, very much as though the economic system is a sort of separate system, a silo that isn't part of our whole kind of planetary system. And now increasingly there's a whole movement called donor economics, which tries to reframe the teaching of economics in schools and universities to set that right, and to have students of economics understand that the economic system can only operate within the confines of the physical planetary boundaries that we're all working in. In other words, if you breach those boundaries, if you overfish the seas, if you abuse the resources, the natural resources that you rely on, if we emit too much carbon, we can't continue to grow in the way that we've always grown, just exponentially, regardless of any other kind of physical constraints. So it's a kind of common sense way of rethinking economics, and I think that's a really good way of thinking about the whole systems approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I should have put that on here. Yes, if you haven't seen Donut Economics, they've got a really good website as well. Just Google it. And I'm always encouraging people not to go and do economics at university yet until they've absorbed Donut Economics into the curriculum. So you can ask them if you're interested. So yeah, just to follow on with that the ideas around skills and ways of thinking, I've taken a few points from the World Economic Forum, which writes an awful lot about jobs and skills. And these points come from the Future of Jobs report in 2018. And they talk about skills being people skills, thinking skills, and practical skills. So people skills that they believe are needed are of various types. I think listening skills, learning how to be empathetic, really listening carefully and trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Having constructive conversations, the sort that where you actually build an understanding and a new idea rather than the ones where you're trying to beat the other person. And teamwork. Influencing skills, which ironically actually is a lot about listening. It turns out that if we listen to people carefully, they're much more likely to listen to us. It's a good thing, isn't it? Oracy, which is speaking skills, writing, using the arts to communicate, storytelling, which we've heard quite a lot about this week. And really important is developing the skills to build relationships. And then once you've built them, to maintain them. And if they go wrong, to restore them. I think we just all assume pretty much that our relationships, both at home and with friends and with colleagues, most importantly, and with teammates, that those things are just there. They either work or they don't work. But actually, we can apply all sorts of skills to making those relationships work. And a lot of it is around listening. And then thinking skills, critical thinking, actually always asking why, and why is this person telling me that? What's their thinking? Can I accept this piece of information from this source? A lot of critical thinking is helpful around the fake news agenda. If you can think critically, you won't be so taken in by fake news. System thinking, we've touched upon, how things are linked to one another. If you change one thing, how does it change something else? And problem solving and tenacity. I think this is something that there's not really quite enough space for in our modern busy lives. We expect our problems to be solved very quickly, or somebody else to have the answer, or Google to have the answer. But actually, sometimes it's worth just sitting with a problem and trying to work it out for yourself. You know, whether it's where did I leave my tennis racket, or why did I fail that maths test, or I'm thinking about all the things I've recently heard in my family. But yeah, sitting with it and actually working it out for yourself is a skill, it's a kind of like a muscle that you need to build up. And then practical skills, design, engineering, IT, textiles. If you're into any of those in your A-levels or extracurricular activities at school, you know, don't think those are not critical. Those are the sorts of skills that lots of people are really going to need. And finally, as I think Sophie alluded to, that understanding how the economy links to the natural world. I work in a woodland doing research, workshops for students, for teenagers. And it's amazing how unconnected to the natural world people have become. And we don't really understand it. And if we don't understand how it works, how can we possibly understand how the economy links to it? And how do you acquire these skills, you know, when you're busy at school or doing all your extracurricular activities? How do you get those skills? And I think a lot of it comes with experience, but maybe you have to kind of make yourself do it. So practice these things, practice your communication skills with friends, practice building your relationship with your brothers and sisters a bit better perhaps than they are now. Practice supporting your friends when they're going through tough stuff by really properly listening. Practice now when you're kind of in the safe zone, and those skills will be really, really useful in your future careers. And secondly, I'd say yes. Take a risk with what might interest you, even if you think it might not. I'm feeling frustrated at the moment because I've created a fantastic opportunity for a 16-year-old locally here, and he's turned me down. And you know, it's nothing I can do to change his mind because from his perspective, it doesn't make sense for him. But I know from my perspective that it would be great. So say yes, even if it feels a bit scary, or may not be something that you feel you're interested in. There might be something in there. And of course, you can always walk away later on politely. And the third thing I'd say is ask for help. Be a bit cheeky. You can get away with it now. You know, people can always say no to if you need some data for your project, if you would like to have some work experience, or if you just want to understand something better. often, generally, people say yes, they like to help young people, but you know, sometimes they say no, and that's fine. That no is not something to be scared of. Sophie, did you have anything that occurred to you when I was going through those?
No, I think I think you made a very good point at the end there. I mean, I get approached about once a week, I would say, by younger people, not perhaps as young as this age group, but people who are at university or trying to move into the sustainability sector, who like some work experience or some advice or some been pointed in the right direction. And I know a lot of my colleagues that work in this area that do, and you know, I certainly always say yes. So
You're very generous.
inundate me. But you can get hold of people now through public forums a lot more easily, through things like LinkedIn and other sort of social networking forums. So that there are a lot of opportunities to connect with people. I really encourage you to not be shy.
Sophie, I think I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions, as I don't think I can see the questions.
Yeah, one or two have come in.
Do you want to read them out? And then I can
yeah, sure. So
maybe you can answer them.
One, I have suggested you may be better to answer them, which was about the BEDZ was completed nearly 20 years ago. Why are we still not building like this right across the country?
I think that's one of those tricky you have to keep asking and probably have to keep solving. There's a lot, it's a very, very complicated, isn't it? And I think it's around communication and influence and economics. So all those skills and things that we've been talking about, answers in there somewhere. Let me know when you find it.
Yeah, and then someone else has asked, well, Toast Oil will hopefully have to adapt what they do when we address food waste in the future. It's a very positive and optimistic point of view, and I just responded on that to say, yeah, I think that in time we can hope things like artificial intelligence will help food producers to plan more carefully and not overbuy, you know, buy exactly the right amount of everything that they need and create less waste. But probably in the meantime, businesses like this are a great way to have a circular approach and kind of fill in the gap to address the issue. Yeah. One more's come in there. Hang on. What's the weirdest job you've seen being made green? Gosh.
Well, I think accountants going green has been one of the most fun things I've come across.
Yeah, definitely green accountancy wasn't something, in green lawyers wasn't something that I would have anticipated.
Green
and then,
lawyers.
what's the main change you'd like government to make to help young people and their future careers? And Kim, I think you're probably best to answer that one too.
Oh, the main change, I think, do what the Labour Party suggests and invest in this green economy. You know, the Green New Deal in America and here and everywhere else around the world, because that's what's going to create the jobs. So let's create jobs as we need to by spending public money on green jobs. That's my political statement for the day.
Excellent, I agree with that. I think we're more or less out of time.
Okay, well, our call to action is a bit different. I've listened to a few of these and people have been sending you away to do things. And I think I'm going to send you away to listen carefully to a wide range of ideas and opinions and listen critically. Think about why that person is saying that or why that article says that. And think really hard. Thinking is not easy. And think big. Think about the whole world and try and work out how it works, and don't take anything on face value. And keep asking questions. Keep asking that question about why BEDZ is the best example we've got. My big questions in my head at the moment are, I think there's enough resources, as far as I understand it, to go round. Why do we need economic growth? And what does that even mean, really? The other thing I'm trying to get my head around is, well, how does CO2 actually work in the atmosphere? I've been told this, but I haven't really got it into my head yet. And perhaps the biggest one that's on all our minds is, how do you get 7 billion people organised enough to save one planet? These are the exciting and vital questions that we don't yet know how to answer. And it's the people that ask questions like this that we need to solve the climate crisis. And these are the people we need to run our future economy. And these are the people that companies, employers need in these jobs. So it's over to you. Thanks very much to Sophie. Thank you to Transform Our World and the Youth Climate Summit team. It's been absolutely amazing, and I'm looking forward now to relaxing and watching more of it myself. Yeah, it's been great fun to be here, and I can see that Rachel Musson is in the house, and I'm going to stay and listen to her because she's fab too. Enjoy your evenings, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.